Here's a question for you. Have you ever started a game just to get destroyed after playing a random opening as black? Many people have some opening knowledge with white, but just play whatever with black. If that's you, I have for you a very good opening to counter e4, the Caro Kann defense. The Caro Kann defense is an extremely solid defense, named after Horatio Caro and Marcus Kann, who played it in the 19th century. It is still being played at the highest level today. Hopefully, after watching this video, you will have some opening knowledge in the Caro Kann and no longer freestyle your openings as black. Without further ado, let's start. The Caro Kann defense starts when white plays e4. You respond c6. The point of this opening is to strike at the center with d5. The most common moves for white in this position is knight to f3 or d4, but it doesn't matter which one they play, you play d5 anyways. For the sake of explaining the opening ideas, let's assume they put both pawns in the center. Now your opponent will likely respond in one of three ways. They will likely either take your d-pawn, push their e-pawn, or defend their e-pawn with nc3. Let's start with if they push their e-pawn. This is called the Caro Kann advance variation. What most grandmasters play in this position is bishop to f5, but a far simpler way to play the advanced variation is to play c5, immediately striking at white's center. If they take your c-pawn, then you just develop your knight with knight c6. Your goal will be to win the two pawns on e5 and c5. Your opponent will likely play knight to f3, and whenever the knight comes to f3, you play bishop to g4, pinning the knight to the queen. If they play a move like bishop to e2 to get out of the pin, then you play e6, launching a discovered attack on the pawn on c5. Your opponent will likely defend with a move like bishop to e3, but now you play knight to e7, preparing to go knight f5 and put pressure on the dark squared bishop. If your opponent tries to kick your bishop now, just take the knight. While you are down a bishop for a knight, your pawns are all on light squares, so they'll be able to counteract white's like squared bishop. Also, with the taking of the knight, the e5 pawn lost its defender, so your knight can simply take. Also, if they just sit around and, for example, play this, and let you take the bishop on e3, then following bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, knight takes e3, then d takes e3, white's two central pawns are weak and you are probably going to win at least one of them. And voila! Just like that, you're going to win a pawn, and the pawns on e3 and e5 are loose as well, and you have very good chances. Let's go back to the beginning just to look over a couple of things. At the start of the position, you might notice that taking the f3 knight immediately is possible, but you have to make sure black can't counterattack against the e5 pawn. So generally it's better to wait and pick your time to take the f3 knight rather than taking it the first moment you can. Now, if your opponent ever plays bishop to b5 in these types of positions, it's alright to just continue with your normal plans. If the bishop takes your knight, that solidifies your central pawn even more. But that's just the advanced variation. Let's also look at the exchange variation, where white takes your d5 pawn. The good news is, the plans between advance and exchange variations are pretty similar. If the white knight comes to f3, then you play knight to c6. Then pin with the bishop. Or you can play bishop f5, the choice is yours. The main difference between the advanced and the exchange is that your knight will go to f6, not e7, and your dark squared bishop will go to d6. Once again, if h3 is played, then you can take the knight. Also similar to the advanced variation, you shouldn't be concerned with bishop takes c6, because it makes your center stronger. Unless black plays c4 on move 4, which is the Panov variation, you should just build a setup similar to this. In the Panov, the main point is don't take the pawn, because it just helps white develop. That's a general overview of the exchange variation. Now let's look at what happens if white uses the knight on b1 to protect the king's pawn. No matter where the knight defends from, you take the e5 pawn. After white recaptures, the two most popular moves by far for black in this position are to immediately challenge the white knight with knight to f6 or bishop f5. Let's explore bishop to f5. This is the classical variation of the Caro Kann defense. Warning, this is a very theoretical position, but your opponent probably doesn't know the theory here, so you don't have to know everything either. That being said, let's explore the classical a bit. Knight to g3 is by far the most popular response from white, then you retreat your bishop to g6. If white ever plays h4, then you play h6, creating cover for your bishop. If white plays knight to f3, then you play knight to d7, preventing the knight from going to e5, then you can play e6, then develop the dark squared bishop to d6 or e7 and castle. Here is a sample line. Here, some of black's ideas include going knight to d5 if possible, striking back in the center with c5, or going queen b5 or queen b4 to put more pressure on the queen side. Well, I think that's enough for today's video. Remember, you can't learn an opening just by looking at a guide, you have to try them in a real game to get a real feel for the ideas. Hopefully you learned something, and I'll see you next time.